The clatter of a porcelain cup hitting its saucer echoed my trembling hands. I steadied the fine china, a wave of shame washing over me as I watched my daughter, Juliet, scroll through her phone without looking up. We were in her preferred cafe, a place with walls of polished wood and air thick with the scent of overpriced coffee and baked goods I couldn't afford. "Mom, you're being dramatic," Juliet sighed, her thumb flicking across the glass screen. "Juliet, please listen to me." My voice was thinner than I liked, weaker. At 64, I'd always been the one to give, never to ask. But this was different. I saw Dr. Mendoza. He said the cataracts are advanced. He used that word, advanced. That got her to look up, but only with a carefully practiced expression of mild annoyance. "So? Cataracts aren't a big deal. Everyone's grandmother gets them." My chest tightened. "I can barely see. Last week, I almost walked into traffic on Elm Street." "I couldn't make out the crossing signal, Juliet. It was just a blur of red and white." She rolled her eyes, a gesture so dismissive it felt like a slap. She finally set her phone down, the screen dark. "So, wear your glasses. Get a stronger prescription." "Glasses don't fix this," I insisted, my voice dropping. I hated sounding this desperate, this needy. "Honey, I need surgery, soon." The cafe buzzed around us. I watched a young woman at the next table lean forward, her eyes full of concern as her elderly father described his garden. The tenderness in that simple look made my throat ache. "How much?" Juliet asked. Her tone was already sharp, already braced for an answer she wouldn't like. $10,000. "If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you." I'd practiced saying the number. I'd set it to my cat, to my reflection, to the cracked ceiling above my bed. $10,000. It felt like a mountain, but it wasn't impossible. Not for Juliet and her husband, Benedict. Not for people who drove matching luxury sedans and lived in a gated community. Juliet's laugh was a sharp, brittle sound. 10,000? Mom, really? Do you think we just have that kind of money lying around? "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't an emergency," I whispered, leaning forward. "We have expenses," she said, ticking them off on her manicured fingers. "The mortgage on the new house, the kids' private school, the car payments. Benedict and I are spread thin as it is. We can't just hand over $10,000 because you decided you need surgery." Decided. The word hung in the air, cold and heavy, as if it were a choice, as if I were asking for a vacation to Hawaii instead of the ability to see the world. The doctor says if I wait much longer, the damage could be permanent. I could go completely blind. Juliet picked up her latte and took a long, slow sip, studying me over the rim. "Well, have you looked into other options? Payment plans? Medical financing? There are programs for people in your situation, Mom. You can't expect us to solve all your problems." "All my problems?" The words were so quiet I wasn't sure I'd said them aloud. Was I a collection of problems to her? I thought of the 3 jobs I'd worked after her father left. The graveyard shift at the diner, the weekend stocking shelves, the evening cleaning offices. All so. She could have the piano lessons she wanted, the summer camps, the private college she'd insisted on. "I raised you by myself," I said, my voice flat. "I never missed a single soccer game, even when I had to beg for the time off. I took out loans I am still paying off to send you to that university." "That was your choice," Juliet said, her voice like ice. "I never asked you to do any of that." The words cracked something deep inside me, a hairline fracture in my heart that I knew would never mend. She was right, in a way. I had chosen. I had chosen to put her first, always. I thought that's what love was. I thought that was what mothers did. "You should look into Medicaid," she continued, checking her watch. "There must be programs." My situation. I wanted to tell her my situation was marrying a man who walked out when she was 8. My situation was working as a store clerk for 40 years because I'd spent my own college fund on her childhood, but I said nothing. I just gathered my purse. I should go. My legs felt unsteady as I stood. Whether from age or from the shock, I couldn't tell. "Okay, Mom," Juliet said, already picking her phone back up. "Let me know what you figure out." I walked out of that cafe feeling hollow. The world outside was bright, but to me it was a dangerous watercolor painting. Colors bled into each other. Shapes were undefined, menacing. The drive home was a new kind of terror. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. Leaning so far forward my chest nearly touched the dash. Every shadow was a potential pothole. Every glint of sun off a windshield was a car swerving into my lane. A horn blared behind me, long and angry. I flinched, realizing I was crawling at 20 miles per hour on a main road. "I'm trying," I whispered to the empty car. "I'm trying." When I finally pulled into the parking lot of my small apartment building, I sat in the car for 10 minutes, my heart hammering. I stared at the building. It was modest, but it was mine. I'd always been so proud of my independence, of not being a burden. Maybe that's all I was now, a burden. Inside, I made a cup of tea I couldn't taste and sat at my kitchen table. The same table where Juliet used to do her homework, her small head bent over a math book as I, exhausted from a double shift, tried to explain fractions. I pulled the estimate from Dr. Mendoza's office from my purse. $10,000. It might as well have been $10 million. My savings account held exactly $2,100. My Social Security barely covered the rent and groceries. I was trapped. The phone rang and I jumped, sloshing tea onto the table. For one wild, hopeful second, I thought it was Juliet, calling to apologize, calling to say she'd found the money. "Hello," I answered, trying to keep the desperation from my voice. "Mrs. Hastings? This is Jennifer from Dr. Mendoza's office. I'm calling to schedule your pre-operative appointment." My heart sank like a stone. I'm afraid I need to call you back about that." "Oh." The receptionist's voice turned cautious. "Is there a problem with the scheduling?" "It's a financial issue," I admitted, the shame burning my throat. I need more time." There was a pause. "Mrs. Hastings," she said, her voice kind but firm. "I don't want to alarm you, but Dr. Mendoza was very clear. Waiting too long, it could result in permanent vision loss. Is there anyone who might be able to help? Family, perhaps?" Tears pricked at my eyes. "I thought there was," I whispered, but I was wrong. After I hung up, I sat in the growing darkness. I didn't turn on the lights. The dimness matched the cold dread filling my chest. I had given my entire life to my daughter, and I was now truly, completely alone. For the next week, I lived in a state of controlled panic. I spent hours at the public library, using their large print keyboards and magnified screens to search for help. I found grants for artists, for students, for veterans, but for a 64-year-old retired clerk, nothing. My neighbor, Mrs. Chang, a kind woman with sharp eyes, found me hunched over the keyboard, squinting. "You are trying to read the unreadable, Ilara." "What is wrong?" I told her. I told her everything, the shame a bitter taste in my mouth. She listened, her expression growing harder with every word. "Your daughter," she said, her voice tight. "She is not good." She then sat down and took over the mouse. "Let me look. My eyes are still sharp." After an hour, she pointed to the screen. "Here, this looks promising. The Marlowe Family Foundation. It says they offer senior medical assistance grants." Marlowe, Benedict's last name. That's my son-in-law's family name. "See?" Mrs. Chang smiled. "Perhaps this is his family's charity. Perhaps they would be happy to help, and your daughter simply did not know." A spark of hope, faint and fragile, lit inside me. Maybe Juliet was just ignorant of this. Maybe this was a way to get help without having to crawl back to her. The website looked professional, full of smiling seniors. It listed an application fee. $400 for processing, I read, squinting. It is an investment, Mrs. Chang said, patting my hand. A good one. I scraped together the $400 from my grocery money and my emergency cash, the last of my savings. I filled out the forms, a complicated 20-page document that required me to detail my entire financial history. It took me days, using a magnifying glass until my eyes burned. I mailed it with priority, tracking it online. The website said processing time 2 to 3 weeks. Those 3 weeks were a new kind of hell. My vision deteriorated daily. I could no longer read labels on food. I knocked over a glass, shattering it, and spent an hour on my hands and knees, terrified I'd missed a piece. I stopped calling Juliet. She didn't call me. The silence from her was as absolute as the growing darkness in my eyes. On the 22nd day, a thin envelope arrived. I tore it open, my hands shaking. It was a single page. Dear applicant, after careful review, we regret to inform you that your request for aid does not meet our foundation's current criteria. It was a form rejection, cold, impersonal, final. I took the letter to Mrs. Chang, tears of frustration blurring the words I could barely read anyway. She read it, her lips a thin line. Stay here, she said. She sat at her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She was silent for 15 minutes. Then she let out a low, sharp breath. What is it? I asked. Elara, she said, her voice heavy. This foundation, it is a shell. It's defunct. According to the state register, it was dissolved 2 years ago. But the website, the application. A ghost, she said, a trap. Look at this. She turned the monitor. The registered agent for the foundation before it was dissolved, Benedict Marlowe, your son-in-law. The $400 was gone, my last bit of savings, my last bit of hope. It wasn't just a rejection, it was a theft. They had taken my last pennies and my last hope, all to avoid helping me. The next few weeks were a blur, literally. The world was now a smear of shapes and threatening shadows. I stopped cooking, subsisting on tea and toast. I tripped over my own ottoman, badly bruising my hip. I was a prisoner in my own apartment. Mrs. Chang became my lifeline. She helped me research free clinics. There is one, Elara, she said, her voice strained as she read from her laptop screen, which I couldn't even pretend to see anymore. It's 100 miles away. The wait list for non-emergency, well, what they call non-emergency, is 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months? I whispered. I'll be blind by then. I sat on her sofa, a cup of tea growing cold in my hands. I felt a cold, hard despair settle over me. This was it. This was how my life would end, in darkness, alone. Wait, Mrs. Chang said suddenly. She leaned closer to her screen. Oh, Elara. What? What is it? This is your daughter, isn't it? I leaned forward, squinting at the mass of colored pixels. It was just a bright, meaningless shape. I can't see, Mrs. Chang. What is it? It's a news article, she said, her voice slow and strange. From the society page, local couple hosts event of the season. Juliet? Juliet and Benedict Marlowe, she read. There's a large photo. Mrs. Chang began to read aloud. With every word, the air in my lungs seemed to turn to ice. Local couple Benedict and Juliet Marlowe threw an extravagant 70th birthday celebration for Benedict's parents at the grand ballroom of the Fairview Hotel. My heart was pounding, a sick, heavy beat. The black tie event, which insiders estimate cost upwards of $170,000, featured a 7-course meal by a celebrity chef, entertainment by the City Symphony, and a 5-foot ice sculpture of the family's prized poodle. $170,000. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed the arm of the sofa. $170,000. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. There's more, Mrs. Chang said, her voice a horrified whisper. When asked about the lavish celebration, Juliet Marlowe, radiant in a custom designer gown, told reporters, "We believe in celebrating family. No expense is too great when it comes to the people you love." A sound escaped my throat, a dry, ragged gasp. Mrs. Chang stopped reading and turned to me, her face pale. "Ilara, are you all right?" "All right? No, I would never be all right again." "When?" I managed to ask. "When was this party?" Mrs. Chang scrolled. "The date on the article is 2 weeks ago." 2 weeks after she'd told me she was spread thin. 2 weeks after she'd laughed at my request for $10,000. While I was scraping together my last $400 for their fake foundation, they were spending $170,000 on a party. "Print it," I said, my voice shaking. "Ilara, print it, Mrs. Chang, please. I need to have it." I couldn't read the papers she pressed into my hand, but I could feel their weight. The weight of the ice sculpture, the 7-course meal, the custom gown, the weight of the lie. I made it back to my apartment and called my old friend Matilda. "Matilda," I said, my voice cracking, "I need you to come over, and I need you to bring your reading glasses." She was there in 20 minutes. She sat on my sofa as I sat in my armchair, the printed article in her hands. She read it all. Her face, at first confused, turned to pale, tight-lipped fury. "Flowers imported from Holland," she read, her voice incredulous. "A vodka luge. Ilara, it's obscene." "She told me," I said, staring at the wall I couldn't really see, "that money doesn't grow on trees." "This wasn't about money," Matilda said, her voice low and hard. "This was about choice, and she chose this over you." She shuffled the papers. "Oh, wait, there's another one, a small item from last month's charity gala." She read it, her breath hissing between her teeth. They bid $15,000 on a weekend getaway to Napa and won. $15,000. More than my surgery. For a weekend, I was a fool. I had been blind for years, long before the cataracts. The phone rang later that night. I fumbled for it, the caller ID a meaningless glow. I answered. "Hi, Mom." Juliet's voice. Bright, cheerful, carefree. It was so normal, so completely disconnected from the reality of her betrayal, that for a second, I thought I must have dreamed the article. "Hello, Juliet," I said. My voice was calm. It surprised me. "Just calling to check in. How are you feeling?" How was I feeling? I was feeling like I'd been stabbed in the back by the one person I loved most. I was feeling like I'd wasted my life. "My vision is getting worse," I said. "Oh." A tiny pause. "Well, did you look into those programs we talked about?" Medicaid, or whatever. We talked about. As if she'd been a partner in this, as if she'd offered anything but dismissal. "I'm working on it," I said. Good. Well, I have to run. Benedict's parents are coming over for dinner. Just a quiet night in." Benedict's parents. The people worth $170,000. "Joy," I said, stopping her. "Did you have a nice time at the party last month?" The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. What party?" she finally asked, her voice no longer bright. "The birthday party for Benedict's parents, at the Fairview." Another long, cold silence. When she spoke again, her voice was sharp, defensive. "How did you hear about that?" "It was in the newspaper," I said. "The society page. You were quoted." "Mom, those reporters exaggerate everything. It wasn't as expensive as it looked." $170,000 seems like a very specific exaggeration." "Mom!" Her voice was a whip crack. All pretense of warmth was gone. "That is none of your business. That was Benedict's bonus. We have a right to spend our money how we want." "You're right," I said quietly. "You do." She had every right. The right to spend $170,000 on a party, the right to spend $15,000 on a vacation, and the right to deny her mother $10,000 to save her from blindness. Goodbye, Juliet. I hung up the phone, and in the darkness of my apartment, I finally saw my daughter for exactly who she was. Months passed. The world faded from gray smears to almost total black. I lived by touch. I knew how many steps it was from my bed to the bathroom, from the chair to the front door. I was on the clinic's wait list. 6 more months, they'd said. I didn't know if I could make it 6 more months. My independence was gone. I was a prisoner, and my apartment was the cell. Mrs. Chang was my only link to the outside world. She brought me groceries, read my mail. One Tuesday morning in March, she knocked. "Ilara, I have something for you." I fumbled with the locks and opened the door. She pressed a small, crisp piece of paper into my hand. "What is it?" I asked, my fingers tracing its edges. "A lottery ticket," she said, her voice bright. "The jackpot is 8.2 million. I bought one for me and one for you." I tried to smile. "Mrs. Chang, you know I don't gamble." "It's not gambling, it's a gift," she said firmly. "What's the worst that can happen? Nothing. But maybe, just maybe, something good." I set the ticket on my kitchen counter and promptly forgot it. I had real problems. The clinic had sent a bill for preliminary tests, and even with my vision gone, I knew the red "past due" stamp. The next morning, the pounding on my door was so frantic, I thought the building was on fire. "Ilara! Ilara, open the door!" It was Mrs. Chang. She sounded hysterical. I stumbled to the door, my heart racing. "What is it?" "What's wrong?" "The ticket!" she shrieked as I fumbled the deadbolt. "Where is the lottery ticket?" "It's on the counter, I think." "Mrs. Chang, you're scaring me." She rushed past me into the kitchen. I heard her rustling papers. Then a silence so profound it was terrifying. "Mrs. Chang?" I called out, my hands trembling. "Ilara," she said, her voice a strangled whisper. "Sit down." "Why? What's happened?" "Just sit down, please." I felt my way to the armchair. I heard her walk over, her steps slow, hesitant. She took my hand. Her own was ice cold. "Ilara," she said, her voice shaking, "you won." "Won what?" "The lottery. You won the lottery." The words didn't make sense. "That's not funny, Mrs. Chang." "I am not joking. I have checked the numbers 10 times. I checked them on the news, on the website. Your numbers, they all match. Ilara, you won 8.2 million. 8.2 million. The number was abstract, unreal. It was a number for movies, for other people, not for me. Are you sure?" I whispered. "I am sure," she said. "I have never been more sure of anything." I sat there in my darkness and I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just felt a shift, a tectonic plate moving deep inside me. 8.2 million, I said again, testing the words. "What do we do?" Mrs. Chang asked, her voice giddy and terrified. "We call the lottery office. We call a lawyer." "We tell no one," I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong. Mrs. Chang went silent. "No one. Not even—" "Especially," I said, my heart hardening, "not even Juliet." I had a new plan. I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew it started with silence. And it started with clarity. Mrs. Chang helped me navigate the first steps. She made the calls. She read the documents. We found a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Penelope Reed, who specialized in sudden wealth management. "Mrs. Hastings," Penelope said, her voice crisp over the phone. "After taxes, you will be taking home a lump sum of approximately 4.8 million. My first piece of advice is always the same," Penelope continued. "Do nothing. Do not buy a house. Do not buy a car. And do not, under any circumstances, tell a single soul for at least 6 months. Give yourself time to adjust. You'd be amazed how many long-lost cousins and best friends appear when they smell money." "That won't be a problem," I said, thinking of Juliet, thinking of the $170,000 party. I was going to wait. This wasn't just about money, it was a test to see how long my daughter would ignore me, how long she would treat me as a worthless burden, while I was, in fact, a multi-millionaire. The very first thing I did was call Penelope. "I need a doctor," I said, "the best eye surgeon in the state, and I need to see him tomorrow." Money, it turned out, could move mountains. It could certainly bypass a 6-month waiting list. I hired a private car service to take me to the city. I met with Dr. Wallace, a man with a kind voice and, I was told, hands of gold. "We can have you in surgery in 2 days, Mrs. Hastings," he said, after I explained I would be paying in cash. When Mrs. Chang asked how I could afford it, I told her, "I'm using the emergency fund." It wasn't even a lie. The surgery was a miracle. A week later, Dr. Wallace removed the bandages. The first thing I saw was his face, smiling, clear, sharp, in focus. The second thing I saw when the car dropped me back at my apartment were the dust bunnies under my sofa and the vibrant, glorious green of the leaves on the tree outside my window. I could see. But more than my physical vision was restored, my entire life had been brought into sharp, painful, perfect focus. During my recovery, Juliet called twice. The calls were short, perfunctory. She asked how I was feeling, but never seeing. She never asked about the surgery, about the clinic, about how I was managing. The second call, she was excited. "You'll never guess. Benedict and I are planning a trip to Europe for the fall. It's a bit of a splurge," she laughed. "Probably $15,000 for just 10 days. But we work so hard, you know? We deserve it." $15,000. The same amount as that Napa trip. More than the surgery I had begged her for. "That sounds lovely, dear," I said, my voice perfectly neutral. I was sitting in my kitchen, bathed in sunlight, looking at a bank statement Penelope had couriered over. The numbers were so large they looked like a typo. I could have told her then. I could have said, "Juliet, I'm a millionaire." I could have listened to the shocked silence, the sudden reversal, the fawning, desperate apologies. But I didn't. The test wasn't over. 2 weeks later, she called again, this time to brag about a new purchase. "We went to an art auction, and oh, Mom, we bought the most amazing piece. It was $25,000, but it's for a good cause, and it's going to look perfect in the entryway." $25,000, 2.5 times the cost of my surgery. "That's wonderful, dear," I said. "It is," she gushed. "I'll send you a picture, though. I don't know if you'll be able to see it clearly with your eyesight and all." She had no idea. She hadn't bothered to ask. As far as she knew, I was still the blind, pathetic woman in the dark apartment. "I'd love to see it," I said. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw my 64-year-old face, the lines, the gray in my hair. But my eyes were clear, and they were cold. The woman who had begged her daughter for help was gone. In her place was someone new. I let the experiment run for 3 months. 3 months of perfect vision. 3 months of Juliet's rare, dismissive phone calls. 3 months of my $4.8 million earning interest. I was in my small community garden plot, a new hobby now that I could see the weeds, when I overheard it. Mrs. Peterson, who lived in the next building, was talking over the fence. "Oh yes, can you believe it? Eileen Hastings, right here in our building, won the lottery. $8.2 million, I heard. They published the list of recent winners in the paper." My blood ran cold. I had asked Penelope to keep my name private, but the law only allowed for so long. The grace period was over. "The poor thing," Mrs. Peterson continued, struggling so much with her eyes. "Her daughter, never once visited, never helped her. But I bet that's about to change." I dropped my trowel. The experiment was over. Word would spread like wildfire. It took exactly 4 hours. My phone rang and the caller ID, which I could now read perfectly, flashed, Juliet. I let it ring 3 times. Then I answered. Hello? Mom! Her voice was breathless, high-pitched, a strange mix of excitement and panic. Mom, I just heard the most incredible news. Is it true? I could hear the greed under the fake joy. It was so loud, so clear. What news is that, Juliet? Mrs. Peterson's sister-in-law called her, who called me. She said you won the lottery. Mom, is it true? Yes, I said. A beat of silence, a sharp intake of breath. Oh my God, Mom, this is amazing. This changes everything. Does it? I asked. Of course it does, she shrieked. You must be so overwhelmed, all that money. Mom, you shouldn't be alone right now. Benedict and we can be there in an hour. We can help you. Help you figure out what to do, make plans, investments. You can't handle this all by yourself. Alone. The word was a joke. I had been handling everything alone for years. That's very kind of you, Juliet, I said, my voice as cool and calm as the glass of water in my hand. But I've already made arrangements. I have a lawyer. I have an accountant. It's all taken care of. There was a pause. I could hear her mind spinning, recalculating. Oh, well, that's smart, Mom. Very responsible. But still, we have to celebrate. Come over for dinner this weekend. I'll make pot roast. My favorite meal. She hadn't offered to make it in 20 years. I'm busy this weekend, I said. Busy? Busy with what? Her voice was sharper now. I'm looking at houses. Houses? She squeaked. Mom, you shouldn't rush into a big decision like that. You should stay put. Let the dust settle. You're vulnerable right now. I'm not vulnerable, Juliet, and I think a fresh start would be good for me. But if you move away, we won't be able to see you. What about family? There it was, the magic word. What about family, Juliet? I asked. We haven't seen each other in person in 6 months. You haven't once visited me, not even when you thought I was going blind. That's different. We've been so busy. But now that your situation has improved, we can spend more time together. Not now that I have time, not now that I want to make an effort, but now that you have money. I should go, Juliet. I have calls to make. Wait, Mom, don't hang up. Her voice was frantic. I feel like we're not connecting. I'm coming over. We need to talk about this in person. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? I'm your daughter. We should be sharing this. Juliet, I said, my patience gone. Where were you when I needed $10,000 for my eyes? The silence stretched. Where were you when you and Benedict were spending $170,000 on a party for his parents? The silence that followed was a confession. How did you... It was in the newspaper, I said. The society page. No expense is too great when it comes to family. Isn't that what you said? Mom, that was Benedict's bonus. It's complicated. No, Juliet, it's not. It's very, very simple. I hung up. An hour later, my apartment buzzer screamed. Not a polite press, but a long, angry lean. I looked through the peephole. Juliet and Benedict. She was pacing on the sidewalk, her face red. He was leaning against their expensive car, arms crossed, staring up at my window. I didn't buzz them in. The buzzing continued, insistent for 10 minutes. Then my phone rang. I ignored it. Mom! The shout came from the street. Mom, I know you're in there. Your car is here. Let us in. I walked to my window and slid it open just a crack. What do you want, Juliet? I asked, my voice carrying down to the street. Her head snapped up, her face a mask of rage and poorly feigned concern. I want to talk to you. I want to explain. There's nothing to explain. Mom, please. Her voice shifted, became pleading. She looked around. Mrs. Peterson was peering through her curtains. "People are staring. Just let us up. 5 minutes." I looked down at my daughter. The desperation was real, but it wasn't for me. It was for the money. "I can hear you fine from here," I said. "Fine," she snapped, dropping the act. "Fine, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I was selfish. But that doesn't mean we can't fix this. We're family." "We were never a family, Juliet. I was a service, a convenience. And when I stopped being convenient, you threw me away." "That's not true," she cried. "I love you." "Do you?" I asked. "Or do you love my $8.2 million?" The question hit her. I saw her recoil. Even Benedict from across the street flinched. It's not about the money," she stammered. But her voice had no conviction. "When's the last time you called me, Juliet, just to talk? Before you heard about the lottery?" She opened her mouth. She closed it. We both knew the answer. "Goodbye, Juliet," I said, and I closed the window. I heard her scream my name. I heard her kick the building's front door. Then I heard Benedict yell at her, the sound of a car door slamming and the squeal of tires. The silence that followed was the most peaceful I'd felt in years. The silence lasted 2 weeks. Then the whispers started. It began with Mrs. Chang. She came to my apartment, a worried frown on her face. "Ilara, some people are asking questions in the neighborhood." "What kind of questions?" "A woman came to my door yesterday, said she was your niece from out of town." "I don't have a niece," I said, my blood running cold. "I know that," Mrs. Chang said. "She said she was worried about you, that you'd been acting strangely since the money. She asked me if I thought you seemed mentally competent." I gripped the arm of my chair. "What did you tell her?" "I told her I didn't know any of your family and that she should talk to you directly. But Ilara, she knew things, personal things, about your health." My daughter. My daughter was trying to paint me as a senile old woman. The next day, I got the call from Penelope Reed, my lawyer. "Ilara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be perfectly honest. Have you been experiencing any memory problems? Any confusion?" "No," I said, alarmed. "Not at all. My mind is as clear as my eyesight." "Why?" "Because," Penelope said, her voice grim, "I received a very concerning call today from a woman identifying herself as your daughter, Juliet Marlowe." "What did she want?" "She was asking about the legal process for establishing a guardianship. She's suggesting you may not be mentally competent to handle your own financial affairs. A legal guardian. My own daughter was trying to have me declared incompetent, trying to steal my money, my freedom, my life, all because I wouldn't just hand it to her." "Penelope," I said, my voice shaking with a cold, hard rage. "She is lying. She is trying to steal my money, and we need to stop her." "I believe you," Penelope said, "but Ilara, if she pursues this, it's going to get ugly, very ugly." "I want to fight," I told Penelope. "I will not let her do this." "Good," Penelope said, "because I'm not a fan of bullies. I have an investigator. Let me see what he can dig up. If she's making these claims, she's had to talk about it." A week later, Penelope called me back. Her voice was electric. "We've got something, Ilara, a smoking gun, as they say." My investigator recovered a deleted voicemail from Juliet's phone. It was sent to her husband, Benedict. "What does it say?" Penelope read it aloud. The voice, she said, was Juliet's, panicked and angry. "Benedict, she's not listening. She hung up on me. The old woman is out of control. We have to push the competency angle. It's the only way to protect our assets. Call your lawyer. We need to get this started now." I sat back, stunned. "Our assets?" "Exactly," Penelope said. "She already sees your money as hers. This is proof of intent. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. This is beautiful. We can use this to shut her down completely." I felt a surge of relief. Finally, it was over. I was wrong. It wasn't over. 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. Not the frantic buzzing of before, but a firm, professional rap. I looked through the peephole. Juliet, Benedict, and a woman I didn't recognize holding a briefcase. I opened the door but left the chain latch engaged. The small gap of air between us felt like a chasm. "What do you want, Juliet?" "Mom, we need to talk," she said, her voice full of fake, syrupy concern. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen. She's a psychologist. She's just here to help." The woman stepped forward, smiling a tight, clinical smile. "Mrs. Hastings, your daughter has expressed some very serious concerns about your mental state. I'm here to conduct an informal assessment just to make sure you're doing okay." "I didn't agree to any assessment," I said, my hand tightening on the door. "Mom, please," Juliet begged. "We're worried. This much money, it can be overwhelming. It can change a person." "The only thing I need help processing," I said, "is how my daughter could be so cruel." Benedict spoke for the first time, his voice a low, threatening rumble. "Eileen, you're not thinking clearly. You're isolating yourself. You're making major financial decisions without consulting your family. We're just trying to protect you." "You're not family," I said, looking him dead in the eye, "and I don't need protecting." I started to close the door. "Wait!" Juliet put her foot in the gap, blocking the door. "Mom, please, just talk to me. 5 minutes. Just me. They'll wait downstairs." Something in her eyes, a raw, desperate anger, made me pause. "Fine," I said. 5 minutes. I unlatched the chain. She slipped inside, and I closed and locked it behind her. She stood in the middle of my small living room, her eyes darting around as if assessing the furniture for value. "What do you really want, Joy?" She sat on my sofa without being invited. "I want my mother back." "I'm right here." "No, you're not," she snapped. "My mother was kind. She was generous. My mother would have shared this. She would have seen it as a blessing for the whole family." "The mother you knew was a fool," I said quietly. "She was a doormat. And she's gone." Juliet's face flushed a deep, ugly red. "You're being so vindictive. This money has made you paranoid. And what has the lack of it made you, Juliet? Desperate? Desperate enough to try and have me locked up?" She stood up abruptly. Her hands were clenched into fists. The mask of the concerned daughter was gone. This was the real Juliet. "You know what?" she hissed. "Fine. You want to be this way? Fine. But you should know. I'm not giving up. That money should be for my children's future. It should be securing my family. And I am not going to let you squander it all on your spite." There it was. The truth. "It's not my money, is it, Juliet? In your head. It's yours. And I'm just in the way." "It should be," she screamed. "I'm your only child. It's my inheritance." "You'll have to wait until I'm dead for that," I said. Her face was terrifying. "Maybe," she whispered. "We don't have to." A cold fear, unlike anything I'd ever felt, ran down my spine. That was it. "Get out," I said. My voice was low, but it cut through her rage. "What?" "Get out of my apartment now. I'm not going anywhere until you agree to be reasonable." "Get out," I shouted, "or I will call the police." I grabbed my phone from the table. She looked at the phone, then at me. Her face was a mask of pure, undiluted hatred. "This isn't over," she spat. "This isn't over by a long shot." "Oh, yes, it is," I said, my finger hovering over the 9. She turned and wrenched the door open. "I hate you," she screamed, the words echoing down the hallway. "I know," I whispered, after the door slammed shut. "You just needed me too much to admit it before." I immediately called Penelope. "She threatened me," I said, my voice shaking. "She's unhinged." "Okay, Alara." "We're filing the restraining order right now. and we're sending the voicemail to her husband's lawyers. This will be over soon." But it wasn't. 2 days later, Penelope called. She was not calm. She was furious. "They're bastards," she spat. "Benedict's lawyers. They're good, and they're dirty. What happened?" They filed an emergency motion. They claimed the voicemail was an illegal recording, a violation of spousal privilege, and a dozen other bits of legal nonsense. And the judge, a friend of Benedict's, I'm sure, agreed. He's thrown the evidence out. "What? They can do that?" "It gets worse," Penelope said. "They used the motion to file a counter-complaint. They've been granted a temporary injunction. They're freezing your assets." My money? "Your main lottery account, pending a full competency review. Alara, they've frozen your money." I had $5,000 in my local checking account. The rest, $4.8 million, was gone. I had won. I had the truth. And in a single morning, I had lost it all. "I'm ruined," I whispered, sinking into my chair. "She won." "The hell she has," Penelope's voice crackled over the phone. "I'm angry now, Alara. They've overplayed their hand. But the money, the judge, forget the money. Forget the voicemail. We don't need it. What do we have? We have a pattern of harassment. We have a niece canvassing the neighborhood. We have a fraudulent psychologist showing up on your doorstep. We have a daughter who screamed, 'I hate you,' in a public hallway. They think they're smart. They're just thugs." "So what do? We stop playing defense," Penelope said. "We go to a different court, a different judge. We're not arguing about money anymore. We're arguing about safety. We are filing an emergency restraining order, and we're going to attach every single one of these incidents: Mrs. Chang's affidavit, the building manager's complaint about the screaming, everything. We are going to paint a picture of a dangerous, money-obsessed daughter harassing her elderly mother, and we are going to win." The hearing was 3 days later. It was a different judge, an older woman with tired, intelligent eyes. Benedict's lawyer tried to bring up my confusion. He tried to paint Juliet as a concerned daughter. Then Penelope stood up. She didn't talk about the money, she talked about the fear. She described the niece, the ambush with the psychologist, the screaming in the hallway. The judge looked at Juliet. "Mrs. Marlowe," she said, "did you or did not hire a psychologist to assess your mother without her consent?" Juliet stammered. I was worried." "That's not an answer," the judge said. It was over in an hour. The judge granted the restraining order, 100 yards, no contact. And then she added something Penelope hadn't even asked for. "And I am vacating the injunction on Mrs. Hastings' accounts, effective immediately." This court finds this entire competency claim to be a frivolous and malicious attempt to control an adult's assets. "You're lucky I don't sanction you, Mr. Marlowe." I walked out of the courtroom. My money was back. But more importantly, I was free. 6 months later, I was standing in a kitchen I didn't recognize, but it was mine. I watched the sun rise over the mountains, painting the peaks of Ashworth, Nevada in shades of gold and rose. I had sold the apartment. I had packed 2 suitcases and my cat, and I had left. My new home was a modest 2-bedroom house with a big garden and a screened-in porch. It was peaceful. The restraining order had worked. Juliet had vanished from my life. No calls, no letters, nothing. The doorbell rang. It was Matilda, my old friend, holding a casserole dish. She'd retired and, in a fit of glorious spite, bought a condo just 10 minutes away. "You didn't think you could get rid of me that easily," she said, bustling into my new bright kitchen. "I've brought lasagna and gossip." "My 2 favorite things," I laughed, grabbing plates. "Well," she said, settling at the table, "you'll never guess. Mrs. Peterson's nephew told her. Juliet and Benedict are in trouble." I paused, the plate in my hand. "What kind of trouble?" "Financial. Apparently Benedict made some bad investments. They over-leveraged. They're trying to sell the big house in the gated community, but they're underwater on the mortgage. The bank is foreclosing." I sat down. I waited for the feeling of satisfaction, of triumph. It didn't come. All I felt was a deep, hollow sadness, a weariness. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Matilda raised an eyebrow. "Are you, really?" "I am," I said. "I mourn for the little girl I used to know. I don't know who this new person is, but I'm sad for that little girl." My new life was quiet. It was simple, and it was mine. I had $4.8 million in a very secure, very boring set of investments, but I lived simply. The house was all I needed. I found a new purpose. I started volunteering at the local community center at the adult literacy program. I was paired with a man named James, a veteran in his 50s who had never learned to read. He was stubborn, proud, and terrified. He wanted to be able to read a bedtime story to his granddaughter. We worked for months, starting with See Spot Run. One day he came in, his hands shaking, holding a small book. "I did it, Alara," he said, tears in his eyes. I read her the whole book, and she understood me. That feeling, that was worth more than $8.2 million. Penelope had been hounding me to write a new will. I'd been putting it off. What was there to say? Finally, I sat down and made the call. "It's simple," I told her. "My grandchildren, Juliet's children. I want to set up a trust for their education only, and I want it administered by an independent trustee. Juliet and Benedict are not to touch a single penny." "And the rest?" Penelope asked. "The Literacy Center," I said. "And I want to start a new fund here in Ashworth, a fund for seniors who need medical care but can't afford it, the Clarity Fund." "I like that," Penelope said. As I signed the documents, I felt finished, complete. My money would go to help people who were truly in need, people who were grateful, people like me. A year after I moved to Ashworth, I was in my garden, pruning roses, when a small, unfamiliar car pulled into my driveway. A young woman got out. She looked to be in her early 20s. She looked familiar. The set of her jaw, the dark, wavy hair. She walked tentatively up the path. "Excuse me? Are you Alara Hastings?" "Yes," I said, putting down my shears. I'm Jasmine," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm Juliet's daughter. I'm your granddaughter." My heart stopped. I hadn't seen her since she was 10. Juliet had always made excuses. "They're too busy. It's not a good time." "Hello, Jasmine," I said, my voice thick. "I hope this is okay," she rushed on. I know there's problems with my mom. How did you find me?" "I'm a journalism major," she said with a small, sad smile. "It wasn't hard to find you. You sponsor the literacy program. Your name is on a plaque." I invited her in. We sat on the porch, a polite, awkward silence between us. "My mom," Jasmine started, twisting her hands in her lap. "She told me you had a breakdown after you won the lottery. She said you got paranoid and cut everyone off, that you hated us." The lie was so bald, so cruel, it took my breath away. "Jasmine," I said, "what do you think happened?" She looked at me, her eyes so much like Juliet's, filling with tears. "I don't know what to think. All I know is that my parents they're a mess. They lost the house. We're living in a tiny apartment. My dad, he's being investigated for fraud, and all my mom does is rage about you, about the money you stole from her." "Jasmine," I said gently, "I never sent you a birthday card?" "No. Mom said you didn't care about having grandchildren." "I sent a card and a check every year until your 18th birthday," I said. "Your mother sent them all back, unopened." Jasmine's face went white. She wouldn't. I have the returned envelopes, I said. I kept them. I don't know why. I told her everything. I told her about the $10,000, about the $170,000 party, about the fake foundation, about the psychologist on my doorstep, about the restraining order. I spoke for an hour. Jasmine just listened, her face growing paler and paler. When I finished, she was crying. Quiet, angry tears. I had no idea, she whispered. She told us you were the monster. She told us you were the one who was cruel, but it was her. It was her all along. I wanted a relationship so much, I told her, my own eyes burning, but not at the cost of my dignity. She looked up. Can we start now? That afternoon, I showed my granddaughter how to prune roses. We talked about her classes, about the boys she liked, about her dreams. It was normal. It was a lifetime of normal, packed into one afternoon. When she left, she hugged me. It was a real hug. Tight. Desperate. I'll be back, she said, if that's okay. Your room is already waiting, I said. Jasmine started visiting every other weekend, driving up from her college. She brought her boyfriend. She helped me in the garden. She told me about her father's legal troubles and her mother's growing, bitter isolation. She won't get help, Jasmine said, her face sad. She just sits in the dark, blaming you. On my 66th birthday, I woke up to my house full of balloons. Jasmine, Matilda, and a few of my new friends from the literacy center were all there. They'd baked a cake. We sat on the porch, eating cake and watching the sunset. Jasmine's boyfriend raised his glass. To Alara, the toughest woman in Nevada. I laughed, and the sound was genuine. Later that night, as I cleaned up, Jasmine hugged me. Thank you, she said. For what? You're the one who brought the cake. For being you, she said. For showing me what a family is supposed to be. I held her tight. This granddaughter I'd almost never known. This piece of my daughter that was good and true. That night, I sat on my porch, the cool desert air on my face. I thought about the journey. The pain of Juliet's betrayal still had a faint sting, but it wasn't the defining feature of my life. The lottery hadn't made me rich. It had made me free. It had given me the clarity to see the truth. It had forced me to stop accepting crumbs of affection and demand the respect I deserved. I was 66 years old. I had a granddaughter who loved me. I had friends who respected me. I had a purpose that fulfilled me. I took a sip of my tea. The lottery didn't change my life. The clarity did. And for the first time in the clear, cool darkness, my life was, finally, perfectly in focus. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.